Can anybody claim to love Cleveland as much as Jose Ramirez? A new commitment between the Guardians and Jose Ramirez. Now, what comes next for this team and ownership?
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Guardians fans, what's going on? Good to be back talking Guardians baseball on a Monday with actually news to talk about, and it's good news for a change. Hope you're all staying safe and warm and digging out of the snow you might be piled under if you're in Northeast Ohio and the frigid temperatures. I know it doesn't feel like there's a lot of baseball ahead, but I promise you we're literally just weeks away from spring training. I know some players actually already on their way there. This is Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast for the Cleveland Guardians, the only podcast that is covering the Cleveland Guardians, the majors, the minors, the draft, everything in between, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the number one sports podcast network. If you're new here, my name is Justin Lada, and I am one of your two co-hosts for this show. I have been for 4 years and counting now. I'm also entering my 20th season covering Cleveland Guardians minor league baseball as a prospect writer and editor.
And I am Jeff Ellis, your other co-host here. I've been at Locked On since Locked On expanded into baseball 7 years ago. Before that, I was a national writer at Scout and 24/7, focused on prospects and the draft. I want to thank you for making today's episode your first listen today and every day, wherever it is you get podcasts. Big shout out to all of our everydayers, including those in the Everydayer Club. We appreciate everyone hanging out with us, come rain or shine. And, you know, I have to say this, as always, when news broke, none of us were prepared. No one was anticipating it. The ninja that is this front office strikes again.
Yeah, a couple of days after some interesting comments people did not like that we'll get into another day. I think I'll get into that on Wednesday, so stay tuned for that. Coming up with today's show, we'll touch on how Jose Ramirez got here. Got some fun stories from his time as a prospect later in the show. But later on, we'll also get into what comes next for Jose and the Guardians, including the deferrals. We'll talk a little bit about how the money's going to work here, what that means, David Blitzer's involvement, and what this means for the rest of the roster. Today, leading off by talking about how nobody loves Cleveland as much as Jose Ramirez, and I think he just proved that to us all. Today's episode of Locked On Guardians brought to you by FanDuel. Last call for football on FanDuel. Super Bowl Sunday coming up. If you're a new customer, bet just $5. Get $200 in bonus bets if you win. So if you got buried by the snow or you've been under a rock or been doing whatever else is going on these days, Jose Ramirez inked a new deal with the Guardians. What do we say, Jeff? It's 4 years, $106 million is what he added to his total.
Yes.
It was 3 years and $69 million. Now
correct.
It's 7 years, $175 for the remainder. There's deferrals. We'll get into that in the next segment. We talk more about the money and how all that works. But Jose Ramirez has chosen Cleveland twice now, not just once, but twice. And I know we'll have a little bit of disagreement on this, but on what I would still call an under market deal. We'll figure out the logistics of that in a little bit. But, the first contract he got right after the 2016 season, heading into 2017, it was, I think, 4 years, $26 million.
Something like that. Yeah.
It was pretty low. So, I think that was just him taking a contract to.
It was pre-breakout.
It was after 2016, so it wasn't
1 year.
The Jose we know now, but it was a good Jose. Him taking money, and I think that made sense for both sides given his experience in the season he just had. So I won't really necessarily say that was him choosing Cleveland. It was him choosing Cleveland, but also, I think trying to cash in on a great year, which I don't blame him for. Now we've got two contracts where Jose Ramirez could have gotten a lot more. And he decided to stay in Cleveland for a pretty nice sum of money because he loves Cleveland. And, all that talk that was going on, late in the year about how he was on that podcast and he was upset with ownership or he claimed to be all that kind of stuff that actually happened last spring training. I think we can put that to bed now. Jose is happy to be a Guardian. That's a good thing for everybody. And how many people choose to come to Cleveland? I mean, he's in Cleveland right now, finishing negotiations on this, and the weather in Cleveland's not good. But yet here he is, dotting the I's and crossing the T's on that contract as we go through one of the worst winter storms in Cleveland in quite some time.
Yeah, like you said, we can debate if the new contract is a steal, if it's a balance, however you want to look at it. Bottom line is, if there's anyone you're going to, we know most baseball players after age 35 is sometimes a struggle, and that's why that contract ended. But if there's a guy you are going to give money to, if there's someone that you are going to sit back and be like, well, he's worth $20 million a year, no matter what, just because of what he's meant to the franchise in the city, it's Jose Ramirez. So, no matter how you want to look at it, it's a contract that makes a lot of logical sense for both sides in that regard. And I mean, I didn't know anyone who wasn't happy. I saw a few people. I will say that there was a very small minority being like, this is going to end poorly. This is going to be a situation like you don't care in this situation. Like maybe, I like to think as kind of level headed as they come typically with this. Like a lot of people will say that I'm never happy or things like that I'm always a downer because I always tend to look at like the whole picture. And, even if there is, a normal aging curve, like this isn't the guy you get mad at when about that situation. You're just glad he's here. He's been here so long. He's going to set all these records. He's such a fabric player that it doesn't really matter, how those last few years play out. Like I'm going to say that now, and maybe he'll be the unicorn. Maybe he'll be Joe Morgan. Like that's the.
He's been a unicorn his whole career, hasn't he?
He has, but like he has to be a unicorn on top of a unicorn because the undersized great players don't age well typically. But that's, like I said, that's why where I dug out Joe Morgan. If you want to look at the non-steroid ones, that's your best example of a guy who kept it going. I mean, there's the Ken Caminiti's and the like, but we know there was some additional helpers that Jose doesn't have in those situations. But yeah, I mean, I don't see a way to really complain about this one. It just doesn't make sense to me. You have to be happy that like one of your Mount Rushmore players of the last 50 years is here to stay, wants to stay. I know everyone talks about like what his statue should look like. Jose is such an original. He should get to design his statue. I don't think any of us should be the ones to say like, oh, it should be his helmet falling off, or, oh, it should be, him with the getting ready to swing and connect. Let Jose pick his statue. He is a guy who likes to express himself, who likes to kind of show his thoughts. No problems letting people know what he thinks when he's comfortable from all stories. So I say, let Jose design the statue, and he should be able to pick what exactly it looks like and have it up in the next 3 years.
I was going to say, I don't think we need to wait until 2040 or 2033 when he turns 40 and this contract runs out to have a statue. Why not have the statue dedicated while he's still playing? Why not? I mean, just let it go. I mean, if they didn't have the naming rights to Progressive Field or something, I would like try to rename the stadium to Progressive Stadium or Jose Ramirez Field at Progressive Stadium. Like, I think the Broncos, I think they play at Mile High State or Invesco Field at Mile High Stadium, so they can keep it Mile High Stadium. Make it Progressive Stadium for Jose Ramirez Field, Progressive Stadium. I don't care. Name buildings after him. He's already got streets, everything. The guy deserves everything. I mean, like LeBron James, right? Born in Cleveland or born in Akron. Cavs got very lucky with that because if he wasn't born in Akron, I think even if they won the lottery to pick him, if he wasn't born in Northeast Ohio, I don't think he comes back after his first vote for Miami. If he's born in like Florida or Texas, he's not coming back. So Cleveland kind of got lucky in that respect. And I don't know that the NBA or anything would ever rig a lottery in favor of Cleveland. But if they did, it seemed to work out pretty well for them, I would say.
People thought there was that period because they kept winning the top overall pick. What, like 3 or 4 in a?
Yeah, they had LeBron and Kyrie Irving, and then the
Anthony Bennett and Andrew Wiggins.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, yeah, and they traded for Kevin Love, all that stuff. Yeah, so I don't think it's too soon to name a statue of Jose Ramirez because like this is very lucky. You don't get this. I think it's still kind of under market deal. But it's also Cleveland making good on the front end of the deal here for a little bit, which is fair. So, give them a little bit of credit for late career risk when it may or may not be as feasible. But, you worry about that later. It's like you said, you're doing this for this guy. There's nobody else you would do this for. And it's worth it no matter what happens at the end. And I also want to say, I know people are going to say, well, we can't give the Guardians a pass for doing this for this offseason. We can't sit there and say, well, they did this, so being inactive offensively in the offseason is explainable. I'm not going to say that. I'm not saying it gives them a pass for anything, but it's still I'm not going to say it's not a good thing that they still didn't take on this risk and didn't agree to Jose's demands that he wanted, because it sounds like it was Jose driven. He wanted the 3 years left. He wanted to re-up this contract now, get it out of the way, which I don't blame him at all. So they get a little credit for that, but there's still a lot more to talk about, Jeff. So when the contract is finalized, and when it is, what comes next for Jose and the Guardians, and even David Blitzer? We're going to get into that next. Super Bowl 60 is upon us. It is the last call for football on FanDuel. One final Sunday, one last kickoff, final chance to get in on the action before the NFL season officially comes to a close. This is Super Bowl 60, and FanDuel is making sure you're right in the middle of the action with a special offer just in time for the big game. So you're looking to back the favorite in this game. Who knows who that's going to be? Riding with the underdog or building out one last same game parlay. This is the game everybody has been waiting for. Predictions turn to plays, stats into storylines. Every snap feels bigger. Perfect way to cap off your season, make the Super Bowl even more exciting from kickoff to the final whistle. If you're a new customer of FanDuel, bet just $5, get $200 in bonus bets if you win. So make it count, because after the Super Bowl, the season's over. This is the last call for football on FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 60. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. As always, thank you all Guardians fans, Locked On Guardians listeners, for hanging out with us and making us your first listen today and every day wherever you get podcasts. And we love being part of the daily routine. We love talking Cleveland Guardians baseball with you every single day. You already live your team every day. Take it up a level. Go ad-free. Join the Everydayer Club. Get Locked On Guardians with no interruptions, members only, Discord access, and more for $5 a month or $50 a year. Go to LockedOnGuardians.supercast.com or check the link in the show notes to learn more. Real quickly, I think it's worth explaining this too. I got a lot of questions from people who are asking what's different about being an insider versus the Everydayer Club. So real quickly, if you're joining the Everydayer Club, you do get ad-free episodes of Locked On Guardians on all your favorite podcast platforms. But you also get to hang out with us in the Discord where, stuff about the Jose Ramirez contract and other stuff is being talked about around baseball. You get to join the Locked On Guardians Discord, chat with other Guardians fans, but you also get to chat with other baseball fans. We've got a Discord server channel for every sport, every team, every city, so you can hang out and talk to other baseball fans in there. The Insiders Club is where we do one-on-one texting with everybody and answer questions and give you breaking news when it happens, and ask for mailbag questions. So those are two different things. But if you want one-on-one texting, the insider and some inside information or breaking news, we got the Insider Club. If you want to chat with other fans, you got the Everydayer Club. So there's something different for everybody in both clubs. I just want to point that out for everybody. We haven't done a very good job of explaining that. And it's going to be even harder. I know Jeff's going to get into the money part of it, but Jeff, we never thought that the Guardians would do deferred money. We thought that was going to be something that would be very hard for them to do, but it turns out it just took the right player, the right situation for them to do it. The contract itself, we can get into this now. The contract itself, maybe on the back end, paying a 39-year-old Jose Ramirez $25 million a year might not look the best, but again, I at this point, I'm not concerned about it. Even at that age, I can't be concerned about it because he's done so much up front that I can't really complain about it at that point. You just have to let it go and let that be the way it works out. But it's still, $20 million a year, or what is it? $19 million a year, essentially, is what it comes out to after the deferrals. Or no, I'm sorry. It's
$15 million a year, not counting deferrals.
$15 million a year. Yeah, they will pay that money eventually. So a lot of people think, I'll let you explain the nuts and bolts, but a lot of people think deferred money is just, we're just not going to pay it right now and we'll save the money for later. That's partially true. You and I did a lot of research on deferred contracts because we didn't know anything about it. So we just assumed the Guardians would never do it. So we didn't bother learning. So we had to learn something new over the weekend when this broke. That money still has to be put somewhere. The Guardians can't just say, all right, here's a handshake deal. We'll pay you $70 million for the next 10 years after you retire. They can't do that. That money has to exist somewhere. There has to be proof that the money exists. That means cash on hand, and it means money in a bank account. So the Guardians, whether it's the Dolans or David Blitzer, have to prove that money is in an account somewhere, and it's going to get to Jose Ramirez from the age 43 to 49 at some point. So they can't just say, all right, well, we're not paying him $10 million a year this year for this. We're putting it off. It has to exist right now. It has to exist in the next 2 years somewhere.
Yeah. So the way this basically works out is they can pay $6 million a year into a high interest account. And if they do that over the course of like 10 years plus then 6 years of payouts, that will get them to about the net they need. So they'd be paying 60 million to get to about 100 million paid out. So the way this works is the team, again, it's different for Cleveland than the Dodgers. So the Dodgers would want to put that money in a separate account with like no interest, because the less interest, the lower the tax hit is for them. And the amount of interest they're getting back will never balance out what they lose in taxes. So like, honestly, if they could put like Tucker's money in a zero yield account, they would. A zero yield escrow account. They're trying to get it as low as possible to lower that tax. For Cleveland, they want the high one because they're never near that tax envelope. It doesn't matter. So in some ways, like Jose's contract, if they put in a high yield account, instead of being 25 million a year, it might actually count against the tax for like 27 or 28 million because of the way they would use that money. It's a different approach. But I think it's kind of very telling that he was supposed to make 21 million this year. With the new contract, he's going to make 15, and the minimum they could pay in per year, if I did my math right. And again, I am not going to sit here and say I am an accountant who knows how compound interest works perfectly. I believe I did everything correctly. I did multiple calculations with it. If they put in 10 million a year, which they could also do, I believe then they would essentially at the end of that time have paid $40 million. They would get back 60 million. Whereas this approach is paying 60 million and getting the equivalent of 100 million at the end. So either way, it's a way to defer some of those costs if they go high yield. So like I said, they're kind of doing actually the complete opposite of what the Dodgers are doing, because they're using that interest in their advantage to make it to pay less to make the contract work. But it does feel like essentially every year they're going to pay Jose 15, then put 6 million in a bank account and let that accumulate interest. So instead of paying 100 million to Jose, when the time comes that money is due, they'll have paid 60 million. So it allows them to kind of keep costs down and to do a balancing act. So it's different in that regard. And it's also, I saw so many people jump at this and be like, okay, so this is how the Dolans can get out for paying it. No, they can't. They, as Justin said, it has to go into an escrow account. They have to have the money in there, and it has to be building properly. Like if it's in a situation where they don't have the right amount in to get to that money at the end, then there's a bigger issue. So it behooves them to put more in at the start, honestly, because the bigger initial deposit, the better that compounding interest will be. But yeah, they're going to do it different than the Dodgers do it, and it's a way to make this work for everyone, where Jose is going to take home less money than he was set to take home, even though they're giving him more money. And for a player, it's maybe not the worst thing to spread that out over time as well. So I'm sure he was okay with that in the way this was set up. But and again, that's why I give credit to both sides. They found a creative way to get there. Jose wanted those extra years. He wanted to be paid for and taken care of. They found a way to pay for him, take care of him, and make it so it's not as onerous on the team if injuries or age become an issue. It's still going to be a high amount, but this is also the point where I'll point out this extension was a larger amount of money than the large market White Sox have ever given any player ever. And that's just the extension on the extension.
Almost
both extensions.
Double.
Yeah. So again, I'm not saying Dolan is perfect by any means. I'm not saying he's a good owner. I'm not saying he's a great owner. But whenever anyone says we have the worst owner in baseball, like it just shows that you don't pay attention to baseball. Jerry Reinsdorf exists, and there's some other people out there. I mean, yeah, I get Nutting spent some money this year, but that's the first time in 10 years he's done that. That doesn't again make him.
That's catching up, not surpassing.
So I'm not even saying he's a better than a bottom 10 owner, but it's like, I understand the situation here, but I think you give a lot of credit to everyone involved, bottom line, in this situation.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's, again, you're taking care of your guy. And like you said, is it more money than before? Yes, it is, but it's still worth it. And it's, making good on the front end. And I also want to point out too, like some of those Dodgers contracts pay for themselves because of the interest. Like they put that money into the account and they make interest off the money in the account, and that pays back some of the contract for them. For Cleveland, they could do one or two ways, right? They could put the $6 million in, and I think the rate that they're locked in at goes off. If I read that right, they go off of the last October's mid-range interest, so it's 3.87, right?
But they can go with the long range. That's what I was trying
to
say.
They can go
Cleveland can
okay.
Because it doesn't matter because they're not near the tax, so they don't care
Okay.
about that. They can take the higher interest rate and make more on the interest rate. It just means that Jose's contract, instead of counting as $25 million a year, so it's the reverse. So the Dodgers make like a $25 million contract count as 21. Jose's 25 would count as 29. So they can do the opposite of what the Dodgers are doing by doing the interest
and make some more money off it.
It would make it a higher cap hit or luxury tax hit, but Cleveland doesn't have to worry about getting near the luxury tax.
Right. So. And something I didn't know before this too is something people might not know. Even though Cleveland obviously doesn't come close to paying the luxury tax, everybody pays a percentage of their payroll into the competitive balance tax. Every contract has a competitive balance tax on it. It's a certain percent. Obviously, the Dodgers and the Mets, they go way over, so they got to pay over the luxury tax, whereas the Guardians are paying 5% or 6% on certain contracts into the CBT, not just the raw contract number paid to the player, which I didn't know that before. So that's something new as well. And again, the Guardians can choose to put $6 million in and let it accrue to 10 and keep $4 million of cash on hand. They have 2 years to do this, by the way. They don't have to do it this year. They can do it in the next 2 years. They have to prove to MLB they're doing it with money, accounting, all that kind of boring stuff. And then, or they could put the full 10 million in and make the money off that. It's choose what they want to do. Do they want to keep more cash on hand in the short term, or do they want to come back and get more money back in the long term on all this based on the interest? So I'm not sure which way they'll go with that, but either way, I think it's a benefit to the Guardians as well, because it's going to make them money, whether it saves them money now or it gives them money in a decade from now, which, hard to say that makes a difference, but that could be a David Blitzer thing. So how does this impact payroll? Will the Guardians do more because of this? How is David Blitzer involved? We're going to get into all of that next. Well, it seemed like for a while the Guardians weren't going to do much of anything. I don't know if you want to count this as anything. It's a thing. I don't know. It's not an external thing, but we're keeping you up to date on all things Guardians the entire offseason, which isn't lasting much longer despite the snow on your ground. Hit the bell on YouTube to get reaction videos to things like Jose Ramirez's contract extension, if another move is made, getting ready for spring training. I'll do some top prospect videos as we do a countdown. And make sure you're auto-downloading all your favorite audio platforms so the show stays in your feed no matter what you're doing. You can always keep up to date with the latest episodes, the latest news, what we're thinking, all that fix of your daily Guardians talk wherever you go. So we do appreciate that. And hey, next week, Jeff, we are back to 5 shows a week. So if you've been missing the extra 2 shows a week in your feed, spring training is not far behind. And Jeff and I will be back talking baseball with you 5 days a week in just a week. How about that, Jeff?
Yeah, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention college baseball is returning in right now, especially if Zach Gallen is going back to the Cardinals. It looks like Cleveland's going to have 2 picks in the top 29, so it's an important year for that again.
Zach Gallen's not with the Cardinals?
Cardinals, my goodness. He started with the Cardinals. That's who drafted him. Diamondbacks. He went from the Cardinals to the Marlins to Diamondbacks. So
I thought you were saying something just broke.
Nope. That was just me having a brain cramp and talking about where he started out instead of where he is now. But worst case scenario, Cleveland will have 2 in the top 30. Best case, 2 in the top 29.
Yeah. All right. So we know that David Blitzer, from reporting from Zach Meisel of The Athletic and our friends over at the Salvia's Godcast, reported that David Blitzer was involved here. And that's not a shock because in 2028, he has the option to become the majority owner of this team. That's just 2 years away. So that means the money that comes from that back half of the deal is being paid by David Blitzer. Does that change things? I don't know. Like, does that factor in here? I think it does a little bit, just because he's the guy who's paying Jose Ramirez, at age 35 through 39, at least the majority. I think the Dolans will retain the minority of the ownership, so they'll do that. But David Blitzer will be the majority owner in 2028, and he'll be paying Jose in the back end. So I think that's why it made sense for him to be involved in these negotiations and then understanding all this. And I think it just makes sense for him to kick off things on the right foot too whenever he does take over. Like, you want to make sure that Jose Ramirez is still here while you own the team. He's still part of the team. He's getting paid at least a little better than he has been, even though he's taking under markets. And you have that kind of kickoff going into your first round of ownership, right? Like it would kind of stink for David Blitzer in the city if Jose is coming up on a contract extension or a negotiation. And maybe the timing of the lockout also played into this a little bit too. I don't know if that's for sure either, but I do think there's a little significance to David Blitzer being involved. I think it has to do more with the PR piece of it, but I'll take that as a good start because of what he's ultimately going to pay on the back end. I think the real question is, if they do save any money this year, the next 2 years, does this give them a chance to find some money to put into the payroll and add some sort of offensive addition to this team, which they very clearly need? I don't know that it does. And I don't want to say, again, I want to stress, like, I'm not sitting here saying, well, they extended Jose Ramirez, so not adding a bat this offseason is totally okay because they extended Jose. I'm not saying that at all. This is very independent to me of that personally. I think they still need to add a bat, but I'm not also, poo-pooing them for this avenue they took as well.
I don't think it changes their money. I got to be real honest, because I think, again, having sat there and crunched the math, I don't think they can afford to not put in $6 million this year to get to what they need to. And I think it's really interesting that like 15 plus $6 million is the $21 million he was set to make this year. So I think there is just a logic that every year, essentially count Jose's contract as $21 million instead of $15 million. That's what they're going to be paying, is an extra $6 billion into deferment every year to make this happen. So this doesn't change their bottom line. At least this year. I guess it technically saves them $2 million next year, and then technically saves them $4 million the year after that, because he was set to make 23 then 25. But this year, I don't think it affects anything. I mean, honestly, I think that the thing I mentioned in passing once, and the bigger effect on this year, is a year ago, MLB gave all these teams that lost their money from the TV deal an extra $15 million, and Cleveland doesn't have that this year. And that extra $15 million, I think we are seeing the loss of that set of funds to a degree. I think this deal came together independent of what they've done. I think, the one thing we know with this team is we don't really know anything that's happening behind the scenes. Like, it's just, they might even tell us something and then it's not the follow through. I mean, we've heard this offseason, we need to do things to improve the outfield. And then we have heard, you're going to deal with the comments I'd already, but we've heard then we feel pretty good. Like, we've heard them contradict themselves. The market is finally heated up. We've finally seen some movement. Maybe we'll see some more trades and things like that. But I'll be very curious to see, if opportunities present themselves. That's what this team does. They sit and they wait. I mean, it was like around this time a year ago, was not when like Seawald and Junis, and they added a good like $12 million in payroll late in the process. So I'm kind of curious to see if opportunities present themselves, if we see, a different tune with the team. I agree. There needs to be some work done. As much as I'm excited to see, Chase DeLauder out there, I also know waiting for him to play over 100 games is a fool's errand so far until he can prove otherwise. So it's like they need someone they can count on. Right now, there's 3 hitters in that lineup I believe in, and then a lot of guys who make me kind of shrug.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the issue right there. I think is like, it's exciting to think about, okay, you've Jose Ramirez for the remainder of his career, and I have no doubts that Jose will do everything in his power. Father Time is undefeated, but I have no doubts in my mind that Jose will do everything in his power to make sure his body holds up and he can play the way he wants to play. I mean, that's not necessarily guarantee anything, but I don't think you're going to have to worry about him getting older and letting things go and not try as hard. Like, I don't think that's in his DNA. So you don't have to worry about that. And I also want to point out too, I think I meant to say this earlier, but this contract to me and getting him here as long as he's going to be and to the end of his career, it's not just on the field, his own performance. I think it's so important too, as the tone it sets for your franchise, because this guy is the face of your franchise, and he's the only guy who's been willing to stay here the way he's committed to it. He's a leader. He's the face of the franchise, but he's also a leader. He mentors guys. He, even if he sometimes has more faith in certain players than maybe he should, talent-wise. We've heard that over the years, that he loves certain players, and they've turned out not to have the best careers, but he still takes guys under his wing, and I think that can also have a long-lasting effect on this franchise too, beyond just the on-field stuff. So, but I agree. I mean, it's exciting to think about Jose Ramirez, and him and Travis Bazzano will get to play together for a long time, and possibly Chase DeLauder if he can stay upright, and maybe, you know, Jace Lavalette will prove us wrong and be part of a core with Jose Ramirez now. Like, those things are all possible because of this contract. And if those guys get to the majors and play well and stay on the field, then they're going to be better players because Jose Ramirez is here and he's a leader and he knows how to be a leader vocally and by example. And that can't be understated. So that's exciting to think about, but I still want to see, you know, somebody better than, you know, no knock to Nolan Jones. Seems like a great guy. I'd want to see someone better than Nolan Jones playing center field or right field if Chase DeLauder, you know, misses his annual 50, 60, 70 games, whatever it is. And I still want to see a better option in the middle infield somewhere. I know you said defense is important, but I still want to see better offense over there. I just do. It's just I can't watch that again, but we'll see what happens with Brito and Bazana. But yeah, there's still work to be done. I can't have Jonathan Rodriguez as a bench option on this team this year. I can't.
Yeah, I think you and I will have the biggest disagreement about up the defense. Like, that's just the thing.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be one of our sticking points where we are just going to be at two ends of the spectrum. But the rest, you know, I agree on. There's no point to have our battles today. We're low on time. We can do this for another day. But the bottom line is, you know, the face of this franchise, the most important Cleveland Guardian, you know, the most important Cleveland baseball player since, like, we're talking Bob Feller and Larry Doby and that era. I mean, who else has really left an impact? We're talking about the most important player since those era is here for his entire career. He doesn't want to go anywhere. He is, not only does he have his no trade, he's got his 10-5 clause, so he is not going anywhere ever. The only question at this point is a question I'm going to throw to you that I didn't tell you about. Is his influence great enough for them to add Starling Marte to instead replace Jonathan Rodriguez as the bench bat, bring in his friend as a right?
Yeah, they were hanging out. I don't know. I guess I'll take that over Rodriguez for at least a year anyway. I want to share a quick Jose story. We have just a little bit of time left. I want to share some prospect stories about Jose. So he first came to Lake County in 2012, was where he first kind of caught on to this. But he was playing like a madman down in Mahoning Valley for Ted Kubiak, who was the manager of the Scrappers at the time. And the Scrappers, the Guardians, the Indians, whatever, finally pushed Jose Ramirez to what was low A Lake County at the time. And Ted Kubiak calls Dave Wallace, who was the manager of the Captains at the time, and he said, "Congratulations, I just sent you the division title," and sending him Jose Ramirez. This is like June or July, mind you. So that was fascinating. And I remember Dave Wallace telling us a week into Jose Ramirez playing at Lake County, and we kept asking him, "Where has this guy been all year?" And Dave Wallace was like, "You tell us. I don't know. And then I remember, Jeff, you remember John Sickles. I shared that post. I shared his post on, or his scouting report from 2012 on Twitter, saying how he had him ranked, and he said he doesn't care if other publications rank him lower than this because he just hits the ever-loving you-know-what out of the ball. And he said,
I
a year from now,
Sickles.
I know. And he said, a year from now, if he goes Altuve on us, this is going to look really low. Well, guess what he did? He went Altuve and then some on us.
Yeah, it's you know, I know we're running long here, but I think it's a show where we're allowed to go a little long because special news. The funny thing with that Dave Wallace statement is that's like the same thing when we asked him about Yandy Diaz. I'll say it's like, where'd this guy come from?
Yeah,
it's a similar one. Right. And then when Jose, I think I mentioned this before the show, when he was in Akron, they were really like trying to fixate on like, you know, getting him to be more fluent, and he had like a special time with the tutor like 30 minutes before everyone else, and the reason he had a special time is because he wouldn't show up for it. It was like, my job is baseball, and like, you know, I have enough here. I can get by. Like, I'll worry about the language stuff later. And we know he has put in a lot of time and effort, and yes, it has, you know, that's something he has done. But like when he was coming up, he was like, no, baseball is what I'm here for. Like, I need to worry about this first. I can worry about that later once baseball is I don't think he's ever thought baseball is secure, but it was just kind of like this classic Jose. Yeah. Like, they knew he was gonna, like, you know, I think at one time they told him that he was supposed to show up at a time that was 30 minutes earlier because he would show up late just because he'd be so busy working on like working out and drills. So they would kind of set schedules knowing like Jose would be so, you know, focused on the baseball side of things, which are, you know, again, these are all positive stories.
They are. They're great ones. I have so many more. We'll share this next time we do an insiders chat on Google Meet. So I'll set that up. We'll be back on Wednesday talking about the value of being a top 100 prospect. Talk about the Guardians' top 100 prospects that have made it so far, what that means, and we'll talk about why it's important to remember what the Guardians do and not what they say. That'll be back on Wednesday. Make sure you sign up for the Everydayer Club if you're never going to miss an episode. It's built for you, ad-free, access to Locked On Guardians, the Discord, and more. Head to lockedonguardians.supercast.com to join the club.
Yes, thank you all for joining us. Remember to rate and review, download daily. It helps.
I might do iTunes review.
Yes, I might do a draft review over this weekend. So let me know what your position you would like. And thank you all. And go Guardians, go.